Now, the separation between church and the state recently shrunk following a Supreme Court decision that made it easier for American families to receive a government assistance for religious private school tuition. And now it's been seen as a victory for many. For more, let's bring in former Trump attorney and Newsmax contributor Jenna Ellis. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, why is this decision so important for Americans of faith?
It's very important because it is a fundamental principle, of course, that's embedded in our Constitution, that the government cannot treat people of faith any differently or with more discrimination than any other worldview in American society. And so this case that originated out of Maine was that the government was giving private tuition assistance to parents, but they specifically excluded parochial schools or schools that had a perspective that came specifically from faith. And the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 opinion that was authored by the Chief Justice, said that that fundamentally is against the U.S. Constitution and that states can't treat people of faith differently, even when it comes to public education dollars. And this is incredibly important, not just for religious freedom as a whole, but especially for parents who are seeing that worldview is implicit and it's embedded in all of the curriculum in any type of education. And so more and more parents are wanting to choose faith-based education for their children.
Okay, and Jenna, we're almost midway through the summer now. Do you have a message for parents who might be worried about sending their kids back to school?
Yeah, well, they need to be absolutely involved. They need to know what's going on in the curriculum of their schools. They need to be looking at school choice options. And, we have some other really great wins, not just from the Supreme Court, but also Arizona that recently passed the most comprehensive parental rights and education package and school choice package. And also, of course, the parental rights and education bill passed out of Florida. And so states and legislatures are taking this issue very seriously. And parents need to get involved not only in the home, but in schools and also in their state legislatures. They need to make sure that they are protecting what their children are exposed to, and that they need to take advantage of making sure that they are using their parental rights that are protected by the Constitution, and they are specifically involved in every aspect of their children's lives.
Right, okay. And what is the most important issue then facing American parents and schools?
Really worldview. And it comes down to the fact that people of faith aren't just the only ones who have a worldview. Everyone has a perspective of the way that they think about what is truth, who is God, who are we as human beings made in the image of God, how do we answer these questions? And so what parents are recognizing is, again, that schools do teach worldview. There's no such thing as a public school that is completely non-biased, that doesn't look at these issues and take a perspective. There's no teacher that comes at these issues that's just completely unbiased and doesn't teach some aspect of morality or truth. And that's why parents need to be involved in training up children in the way that they should go. And that's what Proverbs says: if a parent trains up a child in the way he should go, when he's older, he won't depart from that. And so the crisis here is that the state is trying to push an agenda, the progressive lefts, to push an agenda on our children and force a specific worldview that parents need to make sure that they are the ones that are taking control of their children's education and upbringing and making sure that they are raising children according to the truth and according to a worldview that they want to instill in their children, not allowing children to just be wards of the state.
Okay, so what do you think needs to be changed in American schools then?
A lot. A lot needs to be changed, of course, and we need to make sure we get rid of CRT. We need to make sure that we get back to teaching the basics. We need to make sure that we're funding students, not systems. And so these aren't just public schools, these are government schools. And so what we really need to change is exactly what Arizona just did, which is to make sure that they're funding students rather than systems, giving parents more options, more freedom, more choice when it comes to their child's education, so that they make sure that they can instill their values and what they want to teach beyond just the basics, but the comprehensive worldview in their children.
Okay, Jenna Ellis, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Happy Sunday.